with this. All right, so again, this is the clones and global variables. And we added our variable. And again, this is important that for the number of clones, num clones, we want that to be for all sprites. So that's what we call a global variable. And then we want to wait after that. And then
you want to change the X and Y axis of the clones so they won't be stacked on top of each other.
Yeah, we're getting there next. Yeah, so we're going to build this block first, then we'll build the clones stuff. And then I want an operator to compare. Okay, so this is important. Operators are, I mentioned earlier, are more than just addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. So there's the less than operator, the greater than operator, and the equals operator. What they do is just compare two things and answer the question, is one greater than the other, is one less than the other, or are these two things equal? Okay, so here I want to do an equal operator, and I want to, for the equal operator, I want to know if number of clones, oops, wrong spot, supposed to go in the weight, there we go, if the number of clones is equal to 0. Okay. So we're going to repeat 5 times. After we do those repeats, the computer is going to wait till somehow number of clones gets changed to 0, and then it's going to say game over. Okay, next we need to get the clones to do something. So for the clones, we need the control when I start as a clone. And that's this other block of code over here that we want to throw in there. So that one is going to have a wait block also. And that one is going to have some motion where we're going to set X and we're going to set the Y value of each clone. And like Aiden said, if we don't do that, then the clones will all pop on top of each other, or at least wherever the original sprite is. So we're going to have them go somewhere else. To do that, we're going to use the operator pick random for where the clones end up. And we're also going to pick a random number for the weight. Let's see. Weight. Oh, I grabbed the wrong weight block. Controls. I want to wait seconds, not wait until. And then I can set the number of seconds. So we're going to go, let's see, the book recommends going 0 to 10 seconds. For the X position, they say put it somewhere between -200 and +200. And the Y between -150 and +150. And then the clone is going to say hello for 2 seconds. And the clone is also going to, after it says hello, it's going to change the clone number, which is, what's the clone number at right now?
5.
5, correct. So we're going to do a change on that. And we're going to make sure you grab the right variable. We're going to change number of clones by -1. So the 5 clones end up on the screen, they hang out for a little bit, and then they drop the clone number, and right after they drop the clone number, they eliminate themselves. So back on control, I want to delete this clone. Notice delete this clone does not have a hook underneath it. It's done when you do that, right? That's the end of that clone. So this code I have under when I start as a clone gets attached to every single clone. And so that's a reproduction of the clone, the code in the book here. Do we need to see the number of clones at the top of the screen? It'll run with or without that. Run the script. And what should happen is, if I set it up right, the clone should pop up on different parts of the screen at slightly different times and then disappear at slightly different times. And each one's going to say hello. And then once the last one says hello and deletes itself, then the game's over. The original sprite says game over.
I think I've already did this because when I checked your thing, I saw it's in your script, but I did it. Well, on the assignment thing, what I did was have it. What I did, I can't remember exactly. Well, after it said hello, I am, then I added.
See how it goes. So after you run it a couple of times, what I want you to do is go back to looks. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna alter the clones a little bit to see that they're different. And we'll do this in a couple of ways. I think what I want to do is change the color effect as we make clones. So I'm gonna put that right in the top of the when I start as a clone, change color effect by 25. So as we run through the loop at the top, repeat 5 times, create a clone of myself. When I started as a clone, the color effect is gonna change by 25. We're gonna wait, we're gonna pick a location, we're gonna say hello, we're gonna drop the clone number, and then we're gonna disappear as a clone. So each clone should have a slightly different color when we do that. So I'm just gonna blow this up and run that. Maybe. Where'd you go? Over there. That's better. And again, we've got random times going in there, which can be kind of weird. And they didn't change color the way I thought they would. Okay. That probably then needs to go inside the repeat block.
Which one was that?
The change color effect by. And again, that's a decision you'll have to make with your clones. When do you give the clone some information? Is it right before it's created or right after it's created? And again, it will affect your script a little bit different. So let's try this one. And I'm going to change the random to be from 1 to 6. I think 10 seconds is too long when that pops up. Run it again. Okay, so now they're getting some different colors. Now notice, because I put the change in the repeat block, it's also affecting the original sprite. It's changing color too. So again, something I'll come back and play with. All right, so the next thing I want to do is I want to look back at the previous example in the book. So let me get my book up here. And the previous example showed how to give each clone an ID number. Okay. So here we have, when the flag is clicked, set clone ID to 0. It's repeating 3 times, so it's only doing 3 clones. Inside the repeat block, it's doing a change clone ID by 1 and then create the clone. So at first, clone ID is 0. And then right before we make a clone, we increase that by 1 and we launch a clone. Then a new clone is made, clone ID jumps up to 2, and then we launch that clone. So any variables or settings that a sprite has, when the clone is created, it adopts those settings. So like position, angle, size, and variable values. And then the clone is just going to say its clone ID. So what I'd like you to do is I want you to add the relevant parts for the clone ID to that script we just made. Okay, so I'm going to leave this up here for you to think about how to do that. Give it a try. There's one right way to do it and many wrong ways. There's probably more than one right way, but for sure I know of one right way and I know of several wrong ways that it won't quite work right. So give it a shot. So you're going to have to add a new variable called clone ID. You're going to have to set it, you're going to have to update it, and then you're going to have to tell your clone to say it. So give that a try. I'll do it in just a sec and we'll compare. All right, so I'm gonna go add this to mine right now. This here, so I need a new variable. And then the question is, should this variable be for all sprites or for this sprite only? Any thoughts on that? Dylan was just asking, wasn't
I
sure.
mean, there's only one sprite.
There's only one sprite, so you think it shouldn't matter. So I'm gonna just leave it for all sprites. I'm gonna call it clone. Yeah, I'm gonna call it clone number instead of clone num. Now, a lot of people that have programmed for a while are used to abbreviating names of variables. And again, you don't have to. Clone number is a great one, but clone num's a good name too. And once I do that, then I'm going to need to set it. So I'm going to come in here before. I'm going to set clone number to 0. And then I'm going to go inside the loop here. I'm going to change clone number by 1. And then instead of saying hello down here, I'm going to say clone number for 2 seconds. And I'm going to run it and see what happens. So those are the changes I need to make there. Again, I had to make a variable called clone number. I'm going to set it to 0. And then inside the repeat loop, I'm going to change it each time. Since it's starting at 0 and we usually count at 1, I'm changing the clone number before I make the clone. Okay. If I do the change number after I make the clone, then there'll be a clone called 0, which maybe you want that. I want my first clone to be 1. All right, let's run it, see what happens. 5, 5, 5. Oh shit, that's not what I wanted. Okay, what did I do wrong? It was the scope. Each clone is kind of that sprite, but once it's made, it's really not anymore. It's its own thing. It's a new critter running around out there. And things that happen to the original sprite don't happen to it, but we just linked them with that variable. So again, if you choose the wrong scope on a variable, you've got to delete it and make it again. So I got to delete clone number because I chose the wrong scope and make it again. So I'm making a new variable, call it the same thing, clone number. It's going to be for this sprite only, which will then give each individual clone its own control of that variable when it's made. So I'm going to choose OK. And again, I got to put the code back in because it got deleted with the variable. So I want to set the clone number to 0. I want to change the clone number by 1 before the clone is made. And then I want my clone to say its clone number. And I apologize. I think the book said call it clone ID. Sorry, I call it clone number. Okay. Run it and see what happens. Now I have a clone 1, 3. I think that might have been 2 that popped up a minute ago. There's 5. Oh, 4 was hidden a minute ago, and there's 4. So now each clone knows its given number at the time. Now you can give, so these clones have kind of lame names. Clone 1, clone 2, clone 3, clone 4. I could give clone names like Gary and Carter and Adam instead. Okay. Now that's a little trickier to do that. We'll officially get to it in 2 more chapters, but to do that, you would have to make a list of names to choose from if you wanted them to have more interesting names than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Then you can give them any kind of name that you want, as long as you just pull the name out of the list. We'll go over how to play with lists in another chapter. Okay, but it's a possibility. So what's the point here? The point is we just found out that if we want clones to have specific values of a variable from a sprite and keep their value, then it has to be, the variable has to be for this sprite only. It can't be a global variable. Okay, otherwise all the clones get whatever the last value of the variable was. Okay, which is usually what we want. Questions on this chunk of code? Yes, sir.
So for the big clone of myself,
Yeah.
recreating an edit from